Hello, everybody.
No, you're going, what's going on? It's your boy,
What's
Dad.
going on? It's your boy. I'm going to say Dad, Mr. Oliver. So anyway, I'm talking today about the French Revolution
Off
and
with their heads.
Napoleon. And my son's here. He's not going to be interjecting without letting me know he wants to talk first, raising his hand. And it looks like we got one viewer, so it's very exciting to give up time on my weekend. So what? Oh, two viewers. Uh-oh, it is lit now. And what I'm going to do, hello, is I am going to, my cat is saying hello, by the way. Here he is. His name is Colonel von Fluffy Paws. No, actually, his name is Siegfried, and he is eating right over here. Hi.
He's eating.
Yeah, he's eating.
Oh, Leva wants attention too. He's right behind you.
I gave Leva attention yesterday.
But he's right there.
Siegfried has a face made for media. Look at that face. Look at that. Look at that face. Okay. So anyway, my thought is that we are going to talk about the French Revolution. And whilst we talk about the French Revolution, we are going to... I'm just getting this all overlaid the right way that I want it to be. And going. Oh, whoops! I forgot to mute myself. I gotta mute myself. Okay, and then that way I can see your comments and your questions whilst I am presenting. So, how's that for y'all? Now, I don't think this one is gonna take like 2 hours or anything. I originally allotted 2 hours for this, but as I was putting it together this morning, I was looking and I thought, you know what, the French Revolution, in my opinion, is not tested as much as it should be on the AP test. And I'm biased because I like this particular period quite a bit. So first say hi to me so I know who's out there. And then I'm going to kind of get going. But they'll ask questions. But if you know the general order of events, if you know why things happened, you should be okay. They don't like to test about battles. They do like to test about social history. So I'll try to kind of mention that stuff as we're going on to refresh your memory. Hi, Kate Brown. Where are you from, Kate Brown? Anyway, I'll try to kind of mention those little social history things as we go. But yeah, this is not a heavily tested thing. Now, I think a wonderful long essay question would be something like compare and contrast someone like Robespierre with X, with someone else. What about, or even Napoleon with Hitler? Kate Brown is from Chicago. So that's actually where I was born. So hi, Kate Brown from Chicago. I was born in Hinsdale, Chicago. My son just learned something about me. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Pardon my cough. So, boop, boop. Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. All right. Boop. I want to start by talking about Louis XV. Now, Louis XV, as you might recall, we didn't really talk about him when we talked about the absolutist monarchs. He was the guy that came after, the successor to Louis XIV's throne, and he wants very much to be an absolutist, but he is largely unsuccessful. He tries, but he doesn't have the charisma. He doesn't have the influence that Louis XIV had. His government is always going to be controlled by the Paris Parliament. That's basically kind of like their judicial branch in Paris. And if you notice that Louis XIV, You never heard about that. Louis XV, they're always overturning his laws. Sorry, water break. So, what Louis XV decides to do is he says, look, we went to war in the War of Spanish Succession. Didn't work. For the longest time, we have been enemies with Austria. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what is called a reversal of alliances. And I am going to now focus on being friends with Austria. Now, this is a huge zag all over everybody because they are so used to Austria being the traditional enemy of France. For years, people have been taught, they have been propagandized that Austria bad. Austria is our rival in Europe. And then Louis XV says, no, no. Now I am going to be friends with Maria Theresa. And remember, we talked about her. When she took over in Austria, there was a big kerfluffle because Prussia invaded them. Prussia being Frederick the Great's territory. He invaded them thinking he could gain some territory. Louis is now allied with Austria. Now, of course, we already know how that war ended. Prussia got to keep the territory, so they won. But Louis XV began a series of unsuccessful wars here. The War of Austrian Succession is what the war I just discussed is called. And also the war, the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, as we call it in America, where he is on the wrong side of Britain, the opposite side of Britain, on the same side as Austria. And as we know, during the 18th century, you don't want to be on the opposite side of Prussia or Britain because they always win their wars, at least in that century. So he doesn't win. However, he does marry his son off, and there's his son, a handsome young man right there. He looks like fat George Washington to me. He is Louis XVI. It's his grandson. I think I said son, but his grandson. And Louis XVI, formerly Louis Capet, before they give him Louis XVI name, he is, according to his mistress, a fat, ill-bred boy. That's not what you want your mistress to say about you. I mean, ideally, you don't have a mistress, but it's not nice. It's unpleasant. He was not a very decisive young man. He kind of dithered here and there. And he is married off to that Austrian hottie, Marie Antoinette, who is the daughter of Maria Theresa. Now, this marriage is doomed. As soon as Marie comes, there is all kinds of trouble. People already distrust her. Again, this whole alliance with Austria was a new thing, and people had been conditioned for a very long time to be like, no, I'm not really into that. Kind of think Austria sucks. So Marie Antoinette, she doesn't make things better. She has a thick Austrian accent, doesn't want to learn how to speak proper French, doesn't really make friends very well. She thinks that she is a cutie and a beauty. And so because, I mean, by the standards of the time, she was considered good looking. And she is flirty with everyone. She's married to Louis XVI, who doesn't really have a lot of interest in her. Wow, okay. If you've seen the French Revolution documentary, they went into detail about this. I'll give you the brief version. He couldn't make babies or make an attempt to make babies without it being painful. So he had to have an operation in order to make that fixed. Pardon me just a moment. My daughter just got home from a sleepover, so I'm going to greet her.
Daddy!
Okay, don't yell. There's a microphone. I love you, though. You have a good time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Her cough was so bad she was wheezing. Janessa's mom thinks she's in here.
Oh, my God.
And I asked Lorelai if that's been a problem before. She goes, yeah, sometimes I'm in my life on. You
Yeah.
tell us that.
Yeah, we gotta talk
I
to.
thought it was just my little thing. You do it all the time. No. And he has an inhaler.
So yeah, we'll talk to the doctor about that. So anyway, Marie Antoinette is daughter got home safely. She had a good time at her sleepover, in case you were curious. So Marie Antoinette, I'm just adjusting my thing. Sorry about that. Marie Antoinette is Austrian princess that enjoys gambling and flirting, and she's not getting with her husband, if you follow my meaning, because he can't really. So yeah, it's bad for her. And a lot of rumors start about her almost immediately. Apparently back then, Austrian nationality was identified with homosexuality. So everyone was gossiping that she wasn't pregnant yet with a child because she was a lesbian. They also started rumors about her getting with other people, having affairs and whatnot. So already that's bad. Also, in addition to all of these things, she is a spender. She loves to spend money. So she is spending money, she's incredibly unpopular, and she's not pregs. And everybody expects the queen to have a baby, and especially a male one, but at least be getting pregnant. So, and they don't know about Louis's problem, so they just assume it's her fault. Not good. Meanwhile, what is going on in France? Well, they're in massive debt. If you remember me talking about Louis XIV, or if you just remember talking about Louis XIV in general, Louis XIV went to war very often, and he was frequently unsuccessful. Unsuccessful wars, and wars in general, equal debt. So Louis XIV plus his building projects had created a huge debt. Louis XV made it worse by going to war a bunch of times. Then Louis XVI, one of the first things he does to get revenge on Britain for what Britain had done to France, to his granddad, is he then helps the Americans in the American Revolution. So France is swimming in debt at this point. By the way, synthesis opportunity. The whole revenge thing, we don't want to encourage Leaving to jump up on you. The whole revenge thing, the assisting a country in a revolution. In many ways, I think you could compare Louis XVI helping the Americans to some things maybe during the Cold War. It's not a great analogy, but it would work for synthesis, I believe. You could also say it's similar to France during the Habsburg-Valois Wars, helping out, or even the 30 Years' War, helping out the German Protestants and maybe trying to help those guys out even when it's against their best interest, because ultimately France is going to regret helping out colonists, because sometimes colonists will then have revolutions against France. Now that'll take a while, but France is going to end up on the wrong end of that a couple of times within the next 150 or so years. So there's that. All right, so Louis XVI says, yo, I need to raise taxes. Only way to raise taxes would be if you're Louis XIV, just say it, but Louis XV couldn't do it, and Louis XVI definitely can't do that. So then it becomes kind of a, oh, there's 6 viewers now, how exciting. It's good to have 6 viewers. Louis XVI decides, I am going to call the Estates General. The Estates first actually asks the most influential nobles, the Assembly of Notables, who's kind of a who's who of who's important in France, and that doesn't work. And then they recommend he calls the Estates General. Now, the Estates General is interesting. They have 300, as you see here on the illustration, they have 300 representatives from the clergy, 300 from the aristocracy. Those represent the first 2 estates of France. Now, the clergy is only about 1% of the whole population. The aristocracy and the nobles only about 2% of the whole population. That leaves the commoners, who is literally everybody else. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. It doesn't matter, who you are as far as in society, unless you have a title, a noble title, or unless you have or unless you're a member of the clergy, you are in that third estate. And they have 648 representatives. And you go, oh, that's fair. They're the biggest group of about 97% or so. So they should have the most people. Problem. They all get one vote. So these 300 clergymen will get together, and then they'll debate, and they'll say, like, okay, the question is, should we raise taxes on the nobles? No. And then that's their vote. And the aristocracy will take a vote. And the second estate will then vote, no, we shouldn't raise taxes on ourselves. And then the third estate votes, they all debate, and yes, we should. And the clergy and the aristocracy, by always voting together for the most part, always outvote the commoners, because each estate gets one vote when it really comes down to it. Obviously there are a lot of representatives, but when it comes down to it, their house, so to speak, gets one vote. So this is not acceptable to many. So the third estate, now it's important to remember, this is the 1700s. The intellectual movement of this time is the Enlightenment, which is challenge authority, which is implying that all houses should be checking each other. So in other words, the king should have checks on him. The English have already put into effect a pretty decent constitution, the English Bill of Rights in 1689. And so the commoners are influenced by a lot of these things, because these aren't peasants for the most part. For the most part, these are middle-class dudes. These are educated lawyers. These are even sometimes wealthy dudes that just don't happen to have noble titles. So they know about Enlightenment stuff. And the one that the French Revolution movie, that if you know it, it's that one that had and it had like they kept showing Robespierre waving his arms, and they emphasized him quite a bit. It's a bit of an over-exaggeration, perhaps, to say that Robespierre was the most important or the only important person during this period. Instead, I think you could say that Robespierre is certainly important, but he is one of many. Georges Danton, Hebert, other guys like that are also important. And most of these guys, along with many other members of the Third Estate, most of them, and even some members of the First and Second Estate who think it is unfair and who think it is unjust, who also want a constitution in the English style, they get together. Now, does anybody remember what this is? Now, obviously it's a painting, but go ahead and type it now. It is a gathering. Perhaps they are on something indoors. Perhaps it's a sport that kind of take over the court of, so to speak. Nobody remembers. This, of course, is a painting by Jacques-Louis David, or David if you want to be American about it. And it is it's showing this. It's probably kind of a romanticized. Courtney says, I like Cheetos. Hi, Diana, again. Diana is from New York, as I recall. And yeah, good job, Chicago Kate. And good job, Fresno Sahak. Courtney, not so much. She just likes Cheetos. With the tennis court oath, oh, now she knows it. The tennis court oath is absolutely correct. And in the tennis court oath, they vow, we are not going to disband until we have a constitution. We are going to form a new thing, a thing we call the National Assembly, a new, more democratic body. And we are going to have a constitution, and it is going to be lit, and the king is going to accept it, and everything will be better and a little more British. Louis XVI, not a fan. Yes, you did say it. Thank you. My daughter just typed the answer was the tennis court vote. Yes. My kids know more about the Renaissance. If anybody watched my first one, they were all over that. This, they don't know as much about.
What are we even talking about?
The French Revolution, my darling. So anyway.
Is this the guillotine one?
Yeah, we'll get there. So Louis XVI immediately sends in his thugs, and he's like, guys, we should not allow this to happen. He's trying to restore order. He doesn't want this to get out of control. He doesn't want the people to have rights. He doesn't want a constitution. So Louis XVI says, let's lock them out of their meeting room. They can't have a national assembly if they can't get in the room. And the French Revolution ends, and everybody goes home. No, silly gooses. That's not right. Because, as this political cartoon shows, the first and second estate, and you can always tell, we'll get there, my darling. The second estate, represented by the noble on the far left, he has a sword. The nobility were allowed to carry swords. And the clergy, he's the guy in the middle, and they're looking down, and what's happening? That's the third estate. That's the commoners. And they are getting up. You notice he's moving his chains, and he's reaching for something. Oh, what's that? I got a gat. My wife only speaks German, so I don't know who you are, lady, in here talking. Anyway, he's reaching for his gat. That's a gun. We say that in Fresno. I don't know what you kids in other places say, but he's reaching for his gun. Behind him is a building. It is. You need to get up. It is the Bastille, and sure enough, that political cartoon is talking about how the third estate, the peasants, the shopkeepers, the people of Paris rise up and attack the Bastille. And the Bastille is the king's fortress in France. It used to be like a prison. It's more of an armory at this point in history. And the people kill all the guards, chop off their heads. This is a little graphic, daughter, so if you feel like it's a little too much, then feel free to.
Okay, fine now.
Yeah. They chop off their heads, put them on sticks, and parade around, and then literally take apart the Bastille. I mean, they take it apart brick by brick. Everybody talks about tourists now and people wanting souvenirs and stuff. Taking apart that building on the left that you see in this picture.
It must have taken a really long time.
Well, there were a lot of people, and they were very determined. Now, according to legend, they did it without any tools. I'm going to call false on that and say that they probably used at least some sort of tools. Yeah, that's not good for the kitty, the Easter grass. So, yeah. Anyway, they take it apart. And this is July 14th, 1789. This is an easy date to remember because, okay, the year the French Revolution started. Remember the old joke. Why was 6 afraid of 7? Because, and here's the way you remember it, 7, 8, 9. 1789 French Revolution. Bam, what? And then you go, well, what about the Bastille? How do I remember the day of that? It is literally a holiday in France. And guess what day Bastille Day is? That's right, July 14th. And if you know that, then you know Bastille Day, the Bastille is taken down in July 1789. Now, I'm telling you this because when you read these essays, and I've been reading essays for a while, thank you.
And he's going to be doing it at home for once.
Yeah, this year I get to do it from home online. I'm grading the SAQ,
so
the short answer.
So you have to go to Sanger or something.
It's not Sanger, dear. It's Kansas City.
Same thing.
Right, it's really the same thing. Anyway, the readers are desperate for any kind of data. We're desperate for data. And
What's happening?
you press this. You're talking too much, baby. Anyway, so the reader's desperate for any kind of data. So if you drop 1789, they love you. If you say things like 1789, they love you, and they love you even more if you say July 1789. If you say July 14th, they love you so much. They're like, this kid should be teaching the class. They're really impressed. And it's worth knowing. Also, order of events. You should know the storming of the Bastille happens after the tennis court oath. Now, it's not just because the tennis court oath kind of fell apart when the king locked them out and they couldn't make their constitution. There's also a rumor in Paris that the king, because he's cracking down, is going to send in troops. And that's why they're all going to the Bastille, and that's why they're all trying to get guns and ammo more importantly. So the king, after seeing this, is like, OMG, what do I do about this? And ultimately, he decides, I went there too soon, he decides, all right, fine, I'll let you guys meet. And the National Assembly starts their work. Now, a couple more events you need to know that are still in 1789. These people, what's going on in this picture? Anybody know? Anybody know what's happening in this picture? Why'd it go away? Is it still there? Yeah. It went away. Why is it going away? I don't understand the Googles. There it is. Okay. So what's going on in this picture? It's who is rising up? Who is upset? Who's going to Versailles to collect the king? Angry women. That's absolutely right, Chicago Kate. Angry women. And these are not the high class ladies. No disrespect to them. These are the women of the markets. They rise up and they decide they are going to go to Versailles to spend a little time with the king. And the reason for this is really in many ways related to food, because bread prices were already high. Every revolution that's ever happened is corresponded with the happiness of the lower class. So the lower class are upset because bread's costing more. There's rumors that the king has all kinds, and you know what? They're right. The king has all kinds of flour. He can make all the bread he wants. He's the king. So they're like, well, guess what? Let's go to the king's house, knock on the door, and give him a little what. And on the way there, they get themselves all worked up. And they want to kill Marie Antoinette. Remember I said she was unpopular. My son was right there. I didn't want to go into too much detail, but long story short, they called her the Austrian prostitute. They really hated her and thought she was responsible for all of their trouble, which really is not even fair. Marie Antoinette is not helping things necessarily, but she's also not. She also ain't causing everything. So they go to Versailles. They break into Marie Antoinette's room. She manages to escape through a secret passage. How dope is that? She has a secret passage, and she goes to her husband's room. I guess they had separate bedrooms because she didn't want to interrupt when he was with his mistress, which is kind of an awkward arrangement, but if it worked for them, who am I to judge? And
It's pretty commonplace.
I don't understand. Who is that? My wife only speaks German, so I don't understand who you are.
It's changed on the voice changer.
No, it's not. Okay, the Fear of the Necklace is a story. It epitomizes, like it shows Marie Antoinette's reputation. Supposedly, there was this guy that wanted, depending on the story, sometimes it's that he wanted to have an affair with her. Sometimes it's that he just wanted to impress her. Probably that's closer to the truth. He asks her servant, one of her servants, what she wants. And the servant's like, she wants this fancy necklace. And it's at a time when everybody's in massive debt. And this guy, this noble, buys this super fancy, expensive necklace and presents it to her in public. And everybody's like, oh my God, you're accepting that gift right now when France is in financial crisis? And you know what? It's a good story to tell. Can I imagine that showing up in an essay? No. I can't imagine them giving you a softball essay like, why was Marie Antoinette unpopular? I can't imagine them having an essay about the causes of the French Revolution, maybe with a political cartoon or something. That's why I threw in a couple of political cartoons. Maybe they could give you something like that and then say you could drop that story in. But you're on a time limit, and so I would focus more on facts than stories. That's not to say if you're a fast writer not to do it. If you're a fast writer, great. But I know a lot of my students have trouble getting the data that they crave so much at the AP reading in there. So the diamond necklace would just be gravy on the mashed potatoes of the essay. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, the ladies get